Ladies and gentlemen, let's RedGamer.com video. Let's discuss digital pricing, shall we? Specifically here, we're going to be focused on the PlayStation 4 because PS4 owners are claiming they're being ripped off in digital pricing. And before we jump into this, let's just say that digital pricing has been a massive issue. Not just in this generation, but the previous generation of consoles and PC. It's something that's inherently broken with digital pricing. We are, as customers, getting absolutely the shaft here. And customers are now asking, well, why in the hell are the PS4 versions of games on the store? Specifically here, we're focused on Telltale games, but we will touch on others as we're going through this. Why are they more expensive on the PS4 than the Xbox One? That's basically what we're going to be asking. For example, the Season 1 pass of Borderlands, of Game of Thrones, Season 1 Game of Thrones, $24.99. I'm going to round these prices up to the highest number, so 24 is going to become $24.99 is going to become 25, just for the sake of speaking. And it's $15.99. Let's just call it 16 on the Xbox One. So the weird thing with the Xbox One version is that the season pass of, once again, Game of Thrones contains only episodes 2 to 6. So what this means is you have to effectively buy the first episode of Game of Thrones for $3.99. Now I know what you're going to say, well that's a bit weird, but okay. But this still means that there's a rather large price difference. There's a £5 pricing difference, and if you actually look at the price of episode 1 on the PS4, it's at $4.99. So that's still £1 more expensive than the Xbox One. Tales of the Borderlands, which does include one episode less, but even so, the season pass is £19 on the PS4, and it's £12 on the Xbox One. Now, once again, the season pass of the Xbox One does not include episode 1, it includes episode 2 to 5, but even if you were to add the price of episode 1 onto the Xbox One, there's still a price difference of £3 Great British pounds. Oh, and before you say, well, is this just the UK store? No, it's not. As far as I can see, looking around the internets, this price differential is going on between the US store, the UK, the Canadian, pretty much all of them. Now, things continue to become even stranger because, well, there's a pricing difference between the PS4 and PS3 as well. Just for example, on the PS4, Game of Thrones Season Pass is going to cost you £25, as we've just said. Meanwhile, on the PS3, it's going to cost you £20. Tales for the Borderlands Season Pass is going to cost you $18.99 on the PS4. On the PS3, you're going to save £3. It's going to cost you $15.99. Meanwhile, the single episodes are £1 cheaper on the PS3 as well. But Microsoft are not doing this. If you buy a game on the Xbox One, it's going to cost you the same amount on the 360. So, what the hell is going on? Cross-generation games typically are more expensive on the, well, current generation than what they were in the last generation. So maybe it's possible that Microsoft have managed to get some kind of deal here, making the Xbox One versions a little bit cheaper. In other words, they're trying to undercut the pricing. So users have already taken to, of course, the PlayStation blogs and other forums and asking, well, what their balls is going on. Now, I'd like to reiterate that this is not a problem specifically with Telltale games, because digital pricing, as I've said earlier, is just messed up across all platforms right now. It really is. An example would be Amazon and physical versions of the games. And by the way, it doesn't have to just be Amazon. It could be Shop2. It could be dozens of other different physical storefronts. But just for example, just picking on Dragon Age for a second. Dragon Age Inquisition cost me about £38, £37, something like that on the PC. That's a physical copy. On the other hand, if I was to buy that game from Origin or get a code from somewhere else, it's going to cost me 50 Great British pounds, which for a PC release, a digital release might I add, To be honest, that just completely and utterly takes the piss. It really does. It just completely and utterly takes the piss. And even inside the PlayStation Store, the prices are just ridiculous. Some games, some older games might I add, are 20-30% more expensive than what they should be. In fact, some are £55 and some are even more expensive than that. What's really pissing me off, however, with all of this, is that now, as consumers, we're being asked to buy special edition digital versions of games which have collector's stuff in them. It's like, you know, that... For physical releases, I do kind of feel that you're being ripped off at times, but if you get like an ornate statue and you get like cool artwork given or an audio CD or something physical, I can kind of see the purpose of a special edition, right? It comes with a shiny metal box and it's got like, I don't know, just for example, it comes with like lots of cool artwork and maybe like an audio CD with the soundtrack in it and maybe something else. I can understand that. Okay, charge me more for that, fine. But when you're basically charging like 10, 15, 20 pounds more, or dollars, whatever your currency is, for a digital version of a special version which just gives you a couple of extra shinies, like, just for example, you know, like a special avatar and some audio or whatever built in, that to me is starting to also take the piss. The problem with this is, eventually, companies will put these prices out, but someone will notice the difference. Someone will say, I own both consoles, why is this one more expensive? You know, they'll just load it up and say, hey, didn't I just pay like £4 for this episode on this console, and now it's £5 on this console, or whatever the pricing difference is on whichever game? People do that, or they're going to go around their friend Bill's house, and they're going to say, hey Bill, why is it when you're... Wait, go back to that game a second. There's something not quite right there. I'm sure that's more expensive than my version. And that's the problem. And to be honest with you, I kind of don't like the situation. Now, if it turns out that Microsoft did manage to get a deal, then you need to advertise that, quite frankly. You know, they need to say, hey, we kind of got a deal going, because otherwise people are going to get pissed. And this is all about the transparency once again. Because customers are not stupid, particularly when there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of them all using your system. They're going to speak, they're going to find these problems out. And this is, while this is getting semi-off topic, but I'm kind of in the mood to rant, to be totally honest. This is exactly the same problems as you've got with bullshot trailers, with visual downgrades, releasing all this crap, because people are gonna spot it. You cannot release visual downgrades, you cannot release glitches, you cannot say something 1 minute and then say something else the next and not have someone remember it. It's the internet. People are gonna remember this stuff. You'll be astounded. And of course you've got websites like Internet Archive and all of these other ways of basically checking what you've done. So people are going to remember it. You know, it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow you get caught on this stuff, but you will. Now, I'm not saying that this is sinister. I'm not saying that we're getting screwed over. But I would like to know the reasoning behind it. That's pretty much my point. Because if there is a reason for the Xbox One version to be cheaper, we as consumers need to know that reason so we don't automatically think the worst, because people are already saying, well, is it because PlayStation is winning in the war and therefore Sony are screwing over their customers, and so on and so on. And it might not be that. In fact, it probably isn't that. It probably is because Microsoft have managed to get a good deal. I'm hoping that's the correct reason, because otherwise people do automatically assume the worst. It's just kind of human nature, particularly as recently, let's just be honest, we as customers haven't exactly gotten a particularly good deal. Generally speaking, however, publishers are those who would set the price. It's possible because Sony are making more money from the PlayStation 4, or maybe because of their policies or whatever reason. Obviously, we as consumers cannot see this stuff, so once again, this is where the mind starts speculating. It's possible that Sony are taking a larger cut, and so because they're taking a larger cut, Telltale need to increase their price. Because let's just throw really easy examples out there. I mean, obviously, this is getting to the point where it doesn't, well, yeah, it's ridiculously obvious, but let's assume that their development costs for the game, they need to sell at least the game for at least 10 to cover their development costs, and really to kind of make a profit, they need £12 on the Xbox One, whereas, let's say, on the PS4, they need to kind of, because of obviously increased margins from Sony, they need to raise that price by £2 or £3. Well, obviously, in which case they have to kind of pass the hurt onto us, or they have to be the ones that are hurting. But once again, these are just theories, and I would really like to know as the reason for these prices, but not just these. I would also like to know why digital pricing as a whole is more expensive. I would expect parity at best, but at worst, I would at worst expect parity, but ideally I would expect, well, you know, it to be cheaper, and yet it's not so. This is even worse on console, but even on a lot of digital platforms now on PC, it's not really what you would expect, and frankly, it sucks balls. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon, take care, bye for now.